Welcome back to That Rugby podcast hosted by the Rugby Booth. My name is Luke and today I am flying solo. Yes, Hughesy off on holiday, so it's just your boy today. So what I've kind of done, I've run through on the Instagram, on That Rugby Booth Instagram, asked for some questions, got a couple of questions, and we're just going to run through kind of those plus what else is happening in the rugby world at the moment, and I'll just give you my opinions. You know, we don't need an Australian side of opinions. You know, they're washed anyway. So it'll just be the Kiwi arrogance on this side of the podcast today. So thank you for joining me. But to start off with, we're obviously heading into a proper international rugby. You know, we had a little dribble of it with Japan versus England a couple of weeks ago. Then we had Japan XV versus the Māori All Blacks, and now we get the real show. So to start us off on the Friday, in a few days' time, we have Samoa versus Italy and Georgia versus Fiji. So two exciting games, obviously, Samoa and Fiji, and that Pacific heritage to get us kicked off, and two nations that are looking to put a stronghold, I'd say, on their positions in the world. Like Italy want to show that they deserve to be in the Six Nations for the next 50-odd years, while Georgia trying to get into the Six Nations themselves. So exciting games to start off with. We then roll into Saturday, and this is where the big stuff happened. Now, I'm based out of the UK, so New Zealand versus England happening at 8 o'clock UK time in the morning. Obviously, I believe that's 7:35 or 7 o'clock, 7:05 in New Zealand PM. So a very exciting game. England have already named their team, a very similar team to that of the one that took on Japan more than just over 2 weeks ago. And I think the only differences are in the front row. Will Stewart starts, and I think it's Finn Baxter, the youngster, has come onto the bench. New Zealand yet to be named as I speak at this moment on the Tuesday morning here in England. But very exciting times, I think, for all those involved. Obviously, England haven't toured New Zealand for 10 years, so I think it's an exciting tour. Only 2 games, so both teams will need to come out strong to really take ascendancy in this mini tour, you could call it. And the 2 games that come because of the World Cup last year, it just gives the players a bit more of a break. However, there is still more international rugby. You play at least 3 games. Anyway, but the big one there, we've then got Australia versus Wales. Australia hosting Wales in Australia at 10:45. Both sides looking to bounce back. Wales had a very poor Six Nations campaign, while the Wallabies haven't been since their disastrous Rugby World Cup, and now under new guidance of Joe Schmidt. I think there'll be a lot of questions. I don't know if we'll get many answers in this tour, because it's one of those, unless a team goes out and thumps them, like say Australia thumps Wales, and you go, okay, Joe Schmidt's already effect is taken over, or Wales thump Australia, you go, oh gosh, Joe Schmidt's got a lot of work to do, and Gatland's getting this Welsh side back to their best. So look, there's a lot on the line for both teams to kind of make a statement in that game. Who will do it? It'll be very interesting. A Welsh team that's very inexperienced and lacking a lot of senior players, and then they've lost their cap and star player and Jack Morgan. So interesting there. What will the Wallabies' first lineup be for 2024? Very interesting who's going to be having the captaincy. I imagine Ali Alatoa will have it, but who knows. We're roll into the main event on Saturday night. South Africa versus Ireland, 4 p.m. UK time. You think about that, you look at that, and you just go, that clash is just mouth-watering. Obviously, Ireland losing Jamison Gibson Park, and the Irish pundits have already kind of half written them off because of that. But I think it's going to be a game for the ages. I think under Razzie, obviously Razzie's first game back as a coach after the World Cup, where Yarks Naimba led them in the World Cup. It's going to be interesting what team Razzie names, the level they're at. I went and watched their game against Wales, and as I said in a podcast not too long ago, I think the South Africans didn't fire a shot in that game, and that's not to say that they didn't play well, because I thought they played very well. I just think they kept a lot of secrets. I don't want to say secrets. A lot of plays up their sleeve are the way to do it. Yeah, tricks up their sleeve, because I think they were saving it for this game, and they still came out as a 30-point winner in that game. So I think it's an exciting time for South African rugby, like to be World Cup winners, and then to be questioned about that World Cup win now, because this best team in the world apparently is coming to tour you. They can make one hell of a statement here, and I know Razzie's more keen to win World Cups and set an 88% win rate record, but I think this one's got to the point where it's personal now. I think both teams want to win this so badly. So we'll see who gets out on top first in that one. Then Argentina host France as the main other Tier 1 nation that go at it. There are a few other games in there. Canada against Scotland, Canada hosting Scotland, Japan XV hosting New Zealand Māori, and USA hosting Romania. So, look, there's a lot of interesting rugby, a lot to recap next week, which I will be running you through. But, yeah, very exciting times for international rugby, which we all know is the grandest stage of them all in the rugby circles. Moving on, I just quickly wanted to discuss on this topic, knockout rugby. Now, the reason I am discussing it, obviously I'm based in England, as I've said. The Euros are on at the moment, and it's been really fascinating because I know the Euros aren't the World Cup, but it's one hell of a tournament. It's a massive tournament. It happens every 4 years between the Football World Cups, and I know it's not to do with rugby, but the English fans have been borderline ruthless with their critique of an English side so far, and obviously they were 90 seconds from getting knocked out of the Euros before a fantastic goal by Jude Bellingham. I would factor in that most rugby teams probably don't understand this because, I don't know, rugby obviously a very different sport, so it's hard to kind of encapsulate, but I'm kind of going, I look at England's performance in Euros and I know they've been judged pretty harshly on it, but they've delivered some substandard performances, but they've won, obviously, not every game, but they've won quite a few games won 2 games and have played enough to go through to the next stage, obviously now into the quarterfinals. And I just sat there and I go, as much as, you know, they may not be playing bad or well, or performances may not be high, surely qualifying, then winning in a round of 16 game is the most important thing. And it still seems like, you know, no one's going to remember how badly they played if they win the tournament, is the way I think about it. And that's what I kind of put to rugby. I look at the South African performances, and don't get me wrong, they played a hell of a game against France in the quarterfinal, hell of a game against England in the semi-final. But to say, other than that France game, even against the All Blacks, 14-man All Blacks, that they played their best rugby, I think would be incorrect, because I think, you know, that we saw them play a 50-man All Blacks not a month before the World Cup and win 30-0, and I would say that's arguably their best rugby. And they still came around with a trophy. And I go, it just opened my eyes. I go, I would give anything to qualify for a quarterfinal, a semi-final, and a final, even if it meant playing shit. And I don't know if that's just me, and I pitch that out to you, but I imagine most South Africans will feel the same way. Like, they will not, no one should care too much how you're playing if you're winning games or qualifying and going through. But the English just here, and this is why I think the English sport is probably lacking, just the media in general, the absolute, like, just, I don't even know, disrespect of what is actually happening. Like, it doesn't matter if you're winning and you're going through. Nothing else matters. Like, yes, you want to play, like as an All Black, I want to play attractive rugby. I want to see really good rugby. If we win a game, I'm much happier than if we lose playing good rugby. There's arguments to that case. If it is a terrible game and we win it, you know, say we play, an argument for sake, USA, and, you know, we only just beat them and it's a terrible game and this and that. Yeah, you probably can make an argument. But in knockout tournaments, I just sat there and I was like, so I more wanted to pitch this idea. Like, if your team went all the way through a Rugby World Cup, or even like a URC or a Super Rugby, and they weren't playing the best rugby but they were winning, you'd take that, surely. You would take that in a heartbeat. And I just couldn't understand the English psyche to get that across, that they're so unhappy with their performances that winning doesn't even matter anymore, or qualifying or going to the next stage doesn't matter anymore. It's interesting. And again, like their manager, Gareth Southgate, has been under heavy criticism, and I don't think in rugby circles that would happen. Like, say Razzie even look at like Yarks Ninebar, who, you know, again, as I said, I don't think South Africa played the best rugby in the Rugby World Cup, other than maybe that quarterfinal against France, but they won. So why does it matter? Like, he was never under pressure about playing good rugby because they were winning. And I don't know if it's because it's a different sport and rugby, it's a bit hard to be seen so negative. But to me, the style doesn't matter if you're winning. That's the way I'm going to leave it at. And I'd love to know people's opinion on that. So let us know in the comments if you're on YouTube, or send us some messages via social media. The last point before I start to answer some questions that came in through the pipeline, Scott Barrett captaincy. There's been a lot of talk about Scott Barrett. Obviously, Scott Barrett has had his run-ins with the rugby law. He plays at a level quite tough. And as I've said before on this podcast, locks, they're tall people. They lack oxygen to the brain. And so sometimes they do some dumb shit, yes. But I think the critiques and the negative feedback that's come from Scott Barrett captaincy is just stupid. What makes Scott Barrett not a good captain for the Crusaders, but not a good captain for the All Blacks, but a good captain for the Crusaders? Like, Razor knows he's been there, he's done that. I think Razor's done this extremely well. I think Geordie Barrett as a vice captain and Artie as a vice captain helps out a whole lot. I think it rewards players who have stayed in New Zealand. And again, I've got no problem with Artie Savia going over to Japan, living it up in Japan, and making some money. But it's rewarded what Scott Barrett has done for this country, and I think it's deserved. And I look at the squad and I go, it's the perfect player to have in there. I just don't understand where that's coming from. Scott Barrett's 30, so at the time of the Rugby World Cup, he'll be about 33, and I would say a perfect age for captaincy in our locking department. And it's the same with Artie Savia. You could have named either of them. I think going with Scott Barrett's easier, because what I would prefer from Artie is just to be the best player on the field. Like Scott Barrett, you worry about the captaincy, because Scott Barrett can play good rugby with the captaincy or not with the captaincy. I don't think it matters too much. I think the pressure we would be putting on Artie Savia's shoulders, because of how good of a player he is, to say you've got to play up to this level and be the captain, I think would be tough. I think he could handle it. Of course, he's Artie fucking Savia. But you go there, and then I go, where else are you looking? Like, if it wasn't Artie, who was it going to be? And you cannot argue to me that anybody else in that team. Patrick Tuipulotu, I would have not minded. I think he was just fantastic for the Blues, and obviously took the captaincy this year. Dalton Papali'i, well, you're probably not going to give it to him. He's not even captain in the Blues. So then you kind of look around. Luke Jacobson, I don't know if he's in the team enough to be in there. So I kind of go like Billy Harmon's obviously not in the All Blacks. So I'm looking at like Super Rugby captains, and I go, where do you go? Sofo Moha, I don't think has been in the All Black setup enough. So I go, just to me, I don't know how the questions came up so bad. Oh, he can't be captain. He can't do this. He's ill-disciplined. Oh, he's not even that good of a player. I sit there and go, I just think it's all fluff, and it's stupidity. I think he's got just about, if not more, of a right as captaincy than Sam Cane does. And I think it works out well, because as much as you want your captain to play the full 80, I think Scott Barrett can come off. Like, if you look at those locking partners, I see Tuipulotu and Barrett, and both of them can play 80 minutes, but they don't have to. And I think Tupavai comes on, and you've got Artie Savia waiting in the wings for the last 15. Imagine that, 15 minutes left in a game, a tight game against England. Scott Barrett comes off, Tupavai comes on, and the captaincy goes on to Artie, and he just takes another step. He hasn't had any of the media pressure, any of the captaincy obligations up until that last 15 minutes when he becomes a real leader and stamps his authority in a game. I just think it works out really well. So would love to hear thoughts on that as well. Is Scott Barrett the right man for captaincy? I think he is. I look at this team and I don't see anyone else that could have been it other than Artie Savia. Okay, first question that came in. I won't be able to get to all the questions, unfortunately, but this one I did like a little bit. Someone asked the 2027 World Cup squad prediction. Now, I'm going to do the New Zealand one. I don't know if you were asking for the New Zealand one, so maybe be a little bit more specific on what one you were asking next time, because I know the New Zealand one well enough at least. I have made a video on YouTube if you want to watch that a while ago, I think after the 2023 World Cup, just to highlight that. But I'll go kind of through it here. I don't think there's going to be a lot of change. When you look at the squad now, there's a few players that stand out. Cody Taylor's one that stands out. He's 33 now. He's going to be 36 at World Cup time. If he keeps staying at that level and peaks at the right time, we can manage him well. I look around, I go Ofatonga Fussy, 32 at the moment, will be 35 at the World Cup. Probably not one I think will drop out slowly as we go on there. But props are well known to, with age, become even better. And he's playing very well at the moment. Barrett and Tuipulotu, 30 and 31 respectively. I kind of go, put Tuipulotu, maybe you've got Josh Lord waiting in the rings. You've got a few other players there that are knocking at the door, I think, in the locking position. But I think if Tuipulotu wants to do it, he could easily stay around. All of our loose forwards, I mean, the question's more on who they select because I think all of them will be around. So the current selection and the current squad, I'm kind of basing this on them. Ethan Blackadder, they got Finau, Jacobson, Papali'i, Savia, and Satiti. All of them are under 30 other than Artie Savia. So you kind of look around and you go, Artie, I think, will definitely be around. I think Hoskins Tutu probably still around and knocking at the door. I think there's so many options there that I'm kind of just saying I don't see a lot of changes from the squad they've selected now to then. There will be those off changes, someone's injured, change, or someone hits form at the right time, change. Halfbacks, TJ Perenara 32, will he still be playing at that high level at 35? We saw Aaron Smith able to do it, so TJ probably could do it. But we'll see. There's obviously a lot of competition. Cam Roygaard. My interest would have been if Cam Roygaard didn't get injured, what would the halfback makeup look like? Interesting, because Kortstratama only 23, Finlay Christie 28, so a lot of opportunities there for those halfbacks. I think first fives, another one, fly halves. Barrett, Bodie's 33, so where does he fit in at there? I still think he'll be around, and if he's still got the same wheels and playing at the same level, he'll be in the team. McKenzie only 29, so he'll be there, I think. And all those centres, again, all under 30 currently. And then the outside backs are the only ones where you could probably bracket and start to question now. It's because around about 30, outside backs, wingers specifically, are like the wide receivers, the running backs in the NFL, where they have a shelf life, and it seems like at about 30 they start to fall off. Sevu Reece and Mark Talia, both 27. It's not to say they can't be there at 30 years old and doing it, but when I'm looking at now building to a World Cup, those are kind of the ones I'm bracketing. I think Caleb Clark will go strength to strength over the next few years. Nadawa, I am just a big believer he will be fantastic and get more games for the All Blacks, only 24. Peter Feta will be an interesting choice. I don't think when it push comes to shove, he'll still be there. He's 27 at the moment. We'll see. So, yeah, basically what I'm saying is the squad's looking pretty good. Now, what I think will happen, there'll be one or two over the next 4 years that come through and are incredible and do a Wallace Atiti and get themselves in there. We'll never forget the Nahem Mildescada, who went from 1 year playing club rugby to being in an All Blacks team and playing in the Rugby World Cup in 2019. So, it can just take those moments of brilliance, getting the right selection, being in the right team, being on form on the day. So I don't see a lot changing from the current team, but I think there will be a couple that kind of surprise us. Obviously, injuries will play its part, but we're starting to build into a World Cup cycle, so that's why I think he's gone down the Wallace Atiti, the Billy Proctor, Pasileo Tosi kind of era. And I look at our props, and I'm really happy with the front row kind of stocks we've got. Tamaiti Williams is only 23, Tosi, as I said, 25, Newell 24, Lomax 28, DeGroot 25. That's some young, fresh props coming into, older years. That'll be 28, 31, 27, 28, 26 as we're talking World Cup. So I'm excited for that era. And, you've got players like George Bell who've been selected at, 22-year-old. Hookers, Samasoni Tokiihau's not that old either. Amor only 27. So some real potential in that front row to go a long way into the World Cup cycle. I think, biggest question marks around depth and locking, and then the outside backs, where I think there could be some talent that comes through. There's always that one young winger that comes out of nowhere and is electric and ends up in the All Blacks and does some very good things. Last one for the day, and it's another New Zealand rugby topic, of course. Any different? We've got a Kiwi running the show today on the mic, and we're going to talk all about New Zealand rugby. Surprise, surprise. Lads Talking Footy have sent this one in. If you don't follow them, make sure to jump onto their Instagram. They also do a good podcast, a bit more league and union style, other than us union lads just here. But would you like to see New Zealand rugby give the North versus South game a proper crack, our own origin? I would love to see it. I don't think there's enough interest in it. And the reason is I just don't think there's that level of hatred that there is in New South Wales, Queensland. Like, I think it's more of the game would be a spectacle rather than a rivalry. And I don't know where you fit it into the calendar. Like, I would rather go down the route of a Bledisloe test on Anzac weekend in the middle of the Super Rugby calendar. But I've always said I think the calendar's broken already at the moment. What I would do, I would have the Rugby Championship kick off at the same time or same-ish time as the Six Nations at the start of the year. I would then have the Super Rugby season last longer, and then in the middle have a Bledisloe Cup test. So you'd have the 2 Rugby Championship games there, and then I would have a Bledisloe Cup game at the back end. Yes, the Bledisloe Cup may have already been decided by then, but that's not the point. I think the game of the Anzac Day and stuff like that is for that. I don't know how this all like dates works, but this is how I would do it. I would then, have a longer Super Rugby season. If we did that, there could be potential. And say we didn't do the Anzac Day test, we did the Rugby Championship and the Bledisloe was done early on the season. Then we had a longer Super Rugby season. I would then wouldn't mind seeing a North versus South, but I think the rivalry should be New Zealand versus Wallabies. All Blacks versus Wallabies. I don't think it should be North versus South. I think there's more there than there is to go off, if you know what I mean. So I wouldn't mind, I don't know how it would work. I don't know if it could work like even if it was just a 2-game series, or even if it is this one-off match in the middle of Super Rugby season, New Zealand versus Wallabies match. I would then do like a Fiji versus Tonga or a Fiji versus Samoa, at the same time to get it being all-inclusive of that. And then, I think you could do that as a pre-warm-up for these July tests, and over those middle periods in Super Rugby, you lose some of your All Blacks, yes, or Wallabies, yes, but that gets the talent growth going. I just look at, competitions across the world, and Super Rugby has the least amount of rounds of any rugby competition, including rugby league competition, and season goes by pretty quickly, and people will say there's not enough talent and not enough good games for there to be a longer season, but I disagree with that. I think it's the way you sell it as well. I think Super Rugby's not been sold well at the moment. But yeah, for the North versus South, I just don't think I think it could be played one-off as every 4 years or something like that as a spectacle, but I don't think, I know South won the last one when it was during COVID and stuff, but I'm not that bothered that South won it, and I'm, born in Wellington, lived in Wellington most of my life, studied in Dunedin, but I just didn't really, I wanted North to win it, but I didn't care as much as so be a Queensland or a New South after, I lived in Sydney for 3 years, and I supported Queensland, but that's a choice rather than any birth or anything down that line. But seeing the literal hatred that Sydney or New South Wales supporters have over Queensland and vice versa, I just don't think you'd get that level of hatred. So I don't think, as much as I love the idea of giving it a proper crack, I just don't know, A, where it fits in, and B, I don't think there's that much interest. I think, after the first couple of years, it would lose its shine a little bit. I just don't think that hatred's there enough. I'm trying to work if there is a one you could do where it would work, like everyone versus Auckland, because we all hate Auckland. But I think we as New Zealanders and New Zealand rugby fans have enough, and I say hatred as a respect type of word. I think there's not enough dislike there. I think our dislike is proportionate to international teams. So I would much rather see the All Blacks beat the Wallabies than I would see the North beat the South, if you know what I mean. And I think if you ask any Queensland fan or any New South Wales fan, they would rather see New South Wales beat Queensland than the Kangaroos beat the Kiwis. I would put money that would be the answer to those fans. And I think we're the opposite. I would rather see the All Blacks beat the Wallabies. And I think that's global. I'd rather see the All Blacks beat anyone than the North beat the South. I think that's where we stand. We're quite united in our All Blacks front as New Zealand supporters, versing other teams when we go against ourselves. I would rather get a possibles versus probable games maybe going again. I love the idea of that. I think that was awesome to kind of see some talent on show. or even if you do like a three-way match tour of possibles, probables, and Māori or something like that, I think you could do something cool there. But I don't see that. Our international rugby is so much bigger than international league, and with that comes the belief that international rugby is the be-all and say-all, whereas Origin's bigger than International Rugby League, so that's the be-all, say-all, and that's why it gets so much hype, and, you know, everyone loves it so much. So that's kind of just my thought on that. I would love for it to happen. I just can't see a North versus South Origin constantly happening and the rivalry being there for as long as it has. Obviously, a very big game, a very big weekend of games coming up. I'm very excited for them all. Very excited to see the All Blacks playing again, obviously against long-time rivals and colonisers, the English. It will be an interesting matchup, and please stay tuned for all of the updates, all of the going-ons, all of the feedback and reviews that we do that follow the games. So make sure you're following us on Instagram, TikTok, and if you do watch us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and like. For now, I've been Luke, the New Zealand half of That Rugby podcast. I will see you next time. Goodbye.